You know, I had to say this, but unless you really like Varka, do not pull him, because he's so weak to the point that he looks like a main DPS that came out 5 years ago. Can you even imagine that his current best team is to sacrifice half of his damage just to bring sub DPS that doesn't even suit him? That's our free-to-play Grandmaster Varka in a nutshell, which is hard to believe, right? So let's check out the real free-to-play performance of Varka in this video with the help of DPS check in Miastra Wonderland. Alright, so first of all, let's start with my Varka's build, using the best free-to-play option, the R5 Tidal Shadow. But unfortunately, it's really not that great, since it needs healing to trigger its buff, whereas his best team only heals below 70% HP with Bennett, meaning it won't work most of the time. So yeah, honestly it really sucks that they give us a skin instead of a free event weapon that suits Varka, and I can't think of any reason for this other than to sell this nature and making us pay. It's all business after all, isn't it? Anyway, as for the artifact, we're obviously going with the Rising Wind set, with attack, crit damage main stats. But unfortunately my stats are quite far from perfect, since I've been farming books and Mola for the past month. But thanks to that, I was able to count both his skill and burst, so this is pretty much what an average Varka looks like in your hands. Oh, and don't forget to complete the Hazard quest to activate this passive talent. I won't spoil you much, but the quest is actually pretty interesting, so please complete that as soon as you can. Alright, now moving on to Varka's gameplay, it's actually pretty branded. Just spam his normal attack during his elemental skill stat, and use his skill again once it's off cooldown. That's all! By the way, there's no point using his charge attack, because it actually does the same damage as his skill, but slower and way smaller AoE, so just forget it ever exists. And finally, his burst is just a very simple nuke, so use it as you see fit. And that's literally all to his gameplay and rotation. But as we know, a huge part of his kit is tied to his teammate, so let's move on to it right away. Alright, so unfortunately, in terms of team building, Varka's probably one of the most restrictive in this game, with two strict conditions you have to follow. First up is the element, where he needs exactly one Anemo teammate plus two of the same durable elements for full damage, otherwise his damage drops really hard, as you can see here. So that means not only he can't bring any geo or dendro units at all, but he also cannot play any duration aside from Shrill, which is a huge problem because the enemies nowadays are all packed with nasty shit. Just see the current Abyss, where there's no way for him to deal with these stupid not quiet abominations without giving out damage from lunar regulations. Honestly, at this point, it's just better to use a different DPS. Anyway, that's not all. Another condition is that he needs a Hazard member, which allows his normal attack to reduce his skill cooldown, shortening his rotation. Otherwise, by the time the second skill comes out, it's almost as long as Sino, and you really don't want that. So yeah, it's just as crucial as the previous element condition. So once you filter everything out, this is pretty much all he can bring, which seems a lot, right? But don't forget you can't miss the element, and you still have to run a Hazard unit with him, so the actual viable teams are very limited. Besides, if you look closely, you'll notice that a lot of these 4 stars only function as C6, such as Surfers and Toma. In fact, even the 5 stars has a similar problem, like for example C0 Marika, who doesn't even work without Nalan teammate. And on top of that, the almighty Scroll of Hero artifact for Nalan support doesn't work either, because she can't trigger any reaction in this team. So yeah, C0 Marika is actually a really bad teammate for Varka, definitely far worse than playing her as a main DPS. And finally, since Varka always has to bring an Anemo, he has a simple damage comparison between them all, with the same team of Bennett and Dueling, and thanks to Miastra, I could use the total damage deal as the final metric, which makes this comparison pretty accurate. By the way, Jean really deserves a special mention because depending on her constellations, she's either terrible or completely broken for Varka. For your information, her C2 gives a 15% attack speed buff, which is even higher than his signature weapon, and her C4 actually shreds Anemo resistance by 40%, making her one of the best Anemo damage support for Varka alongside Venti and C6000. But most importantly, unlike these two, Jean is a very good healer on top of that, making her absolutely invaluable in any teams other than Pyro with Bennett, especially Hydra with Lina. So if you actually have Jean at C4 or higher, Congrats, she makes Varka a lot better and more versatile. But if yours is only at C0 or C1, then she's basically just another Anemo healer without anything special. Alright, that's basically everything to Varka's team, so it's time for the DPS check. Alright, so let's start with the strongest team with Venti, During and Bennett, just so you don't have to watch any further if this damage is not acceptable for you. And, well, is this a freaking joke? A brand new, full premium team with 3 5-star characters and it barely hits 70,000 DPS? What the hell is this? This looks like someone from 5 years ago. Just look at these numbers. The strongest hit is only 120,000? Hey, Zibai from the last banner was hitting 300,000 with just Columbina at 4 stars. So this damage is just pathetic. And just for your reference, Varka is barely able to beat my Venti's main DPS, who is not even using the Rising Wine artifact and causes 1 less 5-star too. Give him a proper build with signature, and I'm 100% sure he'll outperform Varka. Honestly, I knew Varka wouldn't be a good DPS, but I didn't expect him to be this bad. And I'm honestly really tempted to end the video right here, because if his best team is only doing half the damage of a Nokai DPS, then what's the point of showing the rest? It's only going to get even unbearable. Still, I'm going to finish this showcase and do him justice, so anyone who is still interested in him can get a proper guide and a clear picture of his real free-to-play performance. Alright, so if you don't have Dueling, the best alternative is obviously Xianling, which kinda turns it into a classic national team with Varka as the on-field driver. But since Xianling loses her biggest advantage of Vaporize, she's basically Dueling without Resistance Shred. And to be honest, this is pretty much as strong as Raider National. You know what that means, right? And that's basically all to the Pyro teams. Any other Pyro variations would just be weaker than this, and considering this is already the most free-to-play friendly team, honestly there's no point showing the others. Alright, now moving on to the Hydro teams. The best combo is obviously Furina and Mona, with Jing as the healer. Honestly, I would love to swap Mona for Yelang or even Xingqiu, but that would mean losing the Hesselray teammate bonus. So now you can see how destructive he really is, right? Anyway, compared to the Pyro, it's actually on par or even better than that, which is quite a surprise. That said, remember that my Jing is already at C6, and my Mona is also at C4, both are significantly stronger than at C0, so honestly I'll say this team is not exactly free-to-play friendly. On the other hand, this is a much free-to-play friendly variations with Sucrose and Barbara replacing Jing and Mona. Sadly, I couldn't come up with a better setup because the only 4-star Hesselray member is Sucrose, who isn't a healer, so I have no choice but to bring Barbara to counter Furina's HP drain. And as for the damage, well, just see for yourself, because I'm speechless. Lastly, you can choose to ditch Furina and go for Yelan, Xingqiu and prototype Sucrose instead. It's quite free-to-play friendly as well, and unless your Furina has Constellations, it's actually slightly better to go for this team instead.
Anemo test 63. Rain outlines your fate. Know my soul. Stand clear.
Now as for the Electro, this is where it starts getting difficult, because the only good Electro teammate is Fischl. Everyone else is just average, or straight out doesn't work like Yan-san. So beggars can't be choosers, and Miko is the best one. So there you go. But even so, it's actually better than free-to-play Hydro teams, which is really a surprise. Not that it really matters anyway, because it's still just 50,000 DPS only. Finally, for the Cryo, it's basically the same situation as Electro, but slightly better thanks to Escoffier and Senghe. But since I don't have Senghe, the best thing I can go for is Escoffier with TDDS Charlotte, which is, well, pretty much the same as other options, around 50,000 DPS. And you know what, it's actually better to trade out the double V for Xingqiu and Yelan. There's just no hope in saving Varka, is there? So now things have come down to this, we can conclude that Varka is just a trash DPS, so there's no need to follow his team rules anymore. Can't deal damage right, then we'll find someone else to do it. And the current strongest sub DPS is Innifa and Columbina duo. And you know what? This is the strongest team for Varka. Yeah, I'm totally speechless. Just see the damage composition yourself, it tells the whole story. So finally, in conclusion, it turns out the 2 characters were right. Varka is just beyond death, and no amount of new supports can save him. Average mechanics, harsh team conditions, and most importantly, ridiculously low damage compared to his peers. Can you even believe that his best team is to sacrifice his own damage for some DPS that doesn't even suit him? That's our Varka. So unless you really like Varka, do not pull this guy. It's like spending money on a standard character. Anyway, that's about everything for this video. So if you find this helpful, consider like and subscribe, and tell me what you think about Varka in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.